Hi, good morning, everybody. It is such a pleasure to see all of you here today, this gloriously beautiful day, and a very exciting time in Halifax County. And we are just so pleased on behalf of the Halifax County Chamber of Commerce to see all of you here. We very much appreciate that. I'm going to introduce to you now the lady who is responsible for putting together this luncheon, Christy Johnson, who is the
Director of Business Development and Operations.
Here. I said I was just going to call her the big cheese, but anyway, Christy is going to introduce our speaker and I assume give recognition to our committee. Thank you.
I certainly didn't do this alone. I could not have done it without, where's Becky? There's Becky. And Miss Andrea Thaxton was not on the committee, but she sure has stood in today. The rest of our committee members are Lisa Kipps-Brown over there and Tina Morgan, who'll be coming in late. And, of course, with the help of Liza with the Chamber. So we're glad to have you all here. I know that some of you, this is your first time to Riverstone. So we're glad that you're here. We're very proud of this. And I see a lot of tenants here. In this building, we have NBC, who's the first original kind of anchor tenant, and that's their table right there. And then we have AWFI, who did the ribbon cutting this morning for the coatings facility. The Industrial Development Authority is here. And, of course, the biggest and newest is Faneuil, the Dominion Call Center, which is quite fitting. We have Miyoshi here representing Faneuil. And with that being said, I will go ahead and introduce our wonderful speaker, Mary Doswell. She is the Senior Vice President of Alternative Energy Solutions for Dominion. Her responsibilities include enhancing and expanding Dominion's focus on smart grid technologies, energy efficiency, and alternative energy generation in conjunction with the appropriate business units. She previously served as the Senior Vice President, Regulation and Integrated Planning, and President and Chief Executive Officer of Dominion Resources Services. Doswell joined the Virginia Power, it's been a long morning, subsidiary as an economist. She has held leadership positions in several Dominion operating units, including regulation, market research, forecasting, market analysis and planning, marketing, corporate center restructuring, corporate strategy, construction and customer service, metering services, and billing and credit. She assumed her current position in April 2009. She's a governor appointee to the Virginia Offshore Wind Authority and serves on the board of directors of Mutual Assurance Society of Virginia, Theater 4, St. Catherine's School Foundation, VCU School of Engineering Foundation, and Venture Richmond, of which she is vice chairman. She is also chairman of the board of Sustainable Transportation Initiative of Richmond, a member of the Richmond Ballet Corporate Council, and chair for the American Heart Association's 2013 Go Red for Women campaign. She received her BA degree in physics from Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts. She receives a master's degree in materials engineering with a concentration in econometrics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She also attended the Darden Executive Development Program at the University of Virginia Graduate School of Business in 1996. And I just thought I was busy. And I also... I know, I was going to say, I also know from my research that she has 5 children and 1 set of twins in that, so hats off to her. Give a warm welcome to Mary Doswell.
Well, thank you, and I'm so glad to be here. It's been a while since I have been in this area. I was at one point, and I'll talk about this a little bit, the regional manager of the Midlothian Farmville office, so I was out in the field. And I also had the metering operations for both electricity and our gas operations in Ohio and Pennsylvania. And so I went around to all the offices for metering purposes and was down in the South Boston office as well. So I've been asked today to cover a couple of topics, so it might be seem a little disjointed, but first they said, well, tell us about kind of your personal story and leadership and how it is to be a woman in business and to also have a family and do those. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on that. And then also, because you have a real focus here on technology, we are doing a lot of great things at Dominion from a technology perspective, and that's really what my job is all about these days at Dominion. So I'm going to just breeze through a talk about the various projects that we are working on. We almost had a major project down here in Halifax, and maybe that will come back, and I'll explain a little bit as to what happened there and why we didn't end up. So, first of all, just my personal story. I've really spoken to women's groups a number of times now, but it has really been in the past couple of years. Before that, I really spoke about subject matter and talked about things I was doing at Dominion. And so the first time I spoke to a women's group, I thought, wow, this really feels strange that people want to know really about my career or all this balance, and why would they really care or why would they want to know? But what I found is that women do have these, I call it issues, but this balance, and there are a lot of things that women are involved in, not to mention the family and career, and I have found that they feel better if we share our stories and talk about how we worked through some of these things. So I'm going to touch on these things, leadership, significant achievements, the obstacles, challenges, work-life balance, and lessons learned, and just give you my thoughts on how it has worked for me. Really how I started in leadership, I really knew that's what I wanted to do, and to have responsibility, be accountable for certain operations or organizations within Dominion. And I started out by really being a team leader and volunteering for leadership types of activities. So even if I wasn't necessarily in a leadership position, or even if I had some supervisory, I would always look for other opportunities to head things up or to become involved and take the lead and take that responsibility. I did a lot of self-improvement seminars. I would always look for these one-day little events. Management groups put them on to presentation skills, project management, those types of things that I always was looking for little bits of advice, and all of them weren't really the greatest thing, but I would always pick up one or two tips that always seemed to help. I spent a lot of time on employee involvement, very important, and leadership style kind of dictated making sure that the employees were part of the decision process and part of the whole organization. As I moved along and was working at Dominion, I think of the best advice that I ever had, and I probably didn't realize it at the time, was to really never turn down a lateral position. And at first, when it was first happened and I was offered a new job in a different part of the company, I thought, well, I should definitely be getting a promotion here, and so should I really take this job? I mean, it's just a lateral. And I probably have taken, I can't even count, 5 or 6 laterals in my career, and every time it has opened up so many new opportunities, new doors, people that I meet, new challenges, and it really has been a great way for me to move around the company and also work with different organizations. I've had a lot of informal mentors, had successful projects with those people, and they become people that really get behind you throughout your career, especially since I've been at Dominion a good amount. I've been lucky. I've moved around a lot in Dominion. I was doing an event last year, and our corporate communications folks actually looked at the jobs I've had at Dominion, and they actually calculated, and I think they averaged that I've moved every 17 months to different jobs, so I have been challenged. I'm a little longer. I've been 3 years in this job, but I really don't want to go anywhere. I really like what I'm doing. So I really, but it's been great because I have had very different experiences in all of my jobs. And at times I would think, wow, am I really bettering my career? But every single move I've made has given me something different. I've gone from managing thousands of people to be brought back into the corporate offices to head up kind of a corporate like think tank or strategy when I had no employees reporting to me. And I think, wow, is this really something that's been a good move? And I found each time that it has brought me something. That time when I was working on corporate strategy really did help frame the process that I have used time and time again as to how to look forward. And the job I'm in today, where I really have a clean slate and have to figure out how we are going to adopt new technologies and how we are going to make these happen, that particular view of looking ahead and developing a strategy has really helped me. And at the time, I probably questioned a lot whether or not that was a good move. As a woman, I feel that everyone feels there's a pressure to fit in, and Dominion has a lot of men in our organization, and especially it's a very technical organization, and where I have been in the company, it has been very much, I think, male-dominated. I'm one of 2 women that report to the CEO, so very often it is, there are a lot of men in the room and then just 2 women, but I have found that it's very important to stick to your values and not to feel like you necessarily have to fit in, that it's important that you find your balance and what's important to you, and it will be respected. And if you command respect, if you show the things that are important to you, then you will gain respect. And so it really, I've had to mentor a lot of young, or I have wanted to, but mentor a lot of young women at Dominion. And sometimes that's one of the things that I really see is they're trying so hard to fit in and be one of the guys that they have lost what's important to them and their values, and think it's best to behave in a certain way so that they are accepted, but it oftentimes ends up backfiring. And what I've found is that it's best to be true to yourself, and that, again, what you stand for will be respected, and to be professional at all times is really what's most important. The work-life balance, people have asked, can you have it all? I don't know, really, it's tough at times, and I go through phases and have gone through phases in my career when I'm wondering whether this is really the best choice. I've enjoyed my career, but there are always times when it's been tough. Number one is I've had the support of my husband, and I do have 5 daughters, and they have been very supportive, and it's been challenging. I've had times in my career when I've had to travel quite a bit, but again, sticking to what was important to me, and my husband and I have worked it out that we started with our first child, and both of us had to get to every event, every sporting event, every birthday party, and so we'd kind of work it, and I'd work my schedule. And then we had 2 children, and we'd say, well, okay, it's just good, maybe we'll split up, and you go to this. And then we had our 3rd child, and we're like, wow, we really need to figure this out, and we have kind of our schedule and our calendar. And I can only think of one time, even with the 5 children, that we have had a 3-way conflict, so we had to pull in the grandparents for something. So usually, my husband is a doctor, so he can, if I tell him in advance I can't get to something, he can usually schedule, but he's very bad if there's an emergency and he can't just drop, a patient there and say, sorry, I've got to run. So he can't do that, but I can more move in an emergency situation. So it's actually kind of worked out. There are definitely some times, like I said, with the travel. What's important, though, is really how everyone defines success. And to me, success was not just how fast and how high I could climb in the company. It was important that I was challenged and I wanted to keep gaining responsibility. However, it was very important that I had time with my children. And so I have turned down jobs. At the time, I thought it was the total end of my career. And when I look back, I thought, why did I even consider it? I was asked to actually head up a office that was quite a distance from Richmond. And again, my husband has a practice in Richmond, so I was asked to head up an office, a regional office, and I thought about it for a couple days. My husband and I had long discussions, and Dominion would offer to get me an apartment, and I'd go back and forth. At that time, I think I had just had, my twins were just maybe a year and a half old. They were my last ones. So talk about putting you over the edge. So anyway, I just said, I cannot do it. And I really thought it was the end of my career that I turned down a job. So it wasn't maybe a month later that Dominion came back and they offered me the Midlothian Farmville offices. And that was within striking distance of Richmond, so I was fine. And so it all turned out fine. I got the experience I wanted and needed in the field, which was the best experience I've really ever had. And so it did work out, but I had to stick to what was important. It's very important to me that I was at home with my children at dinner time. So I would leave at 5 or 5:30, and this was very different for Dominion, especially when my children were a little younger, that you're measured by how many hours you're at your desk. And I think a lot of businesses are still like that. And I just said, I'm sorry, I would put the kids to bed and I'd go back and work on my computer at 10 at night. But people didn't know that because it was measured by how many hours you were in the office. But I got the results, I got the work done. And it was just important that I had that window that they needed me for dinner time and for homework time. And then I could get my work done later on, but I wanted to leave. And I was criticized somewhat for that. And I would just basically say, look, this is what I need to do, and I stuck to it. And it has worked out because I think it opened up some things at Dominion, at least in the corporate offices. And certainly the way I manage is to understand where people are and what their work-life balance challenges are. And I have actually pushed for more flexibility with our employees, that it involves a lot of trust. However, people can get work done. And they don't, especially in this world today where so many jobs can be done virtually. And it's so important that we try to look at that flexibility. Otherwise, we won't keep the women in the workforce, and we won't offer the flexibility and the challenges and the good work that people can contribute and still make sure the rest of their life is going fine. So I'm very results-driven, and I'm very results-driven with my employees, which is where you need to be if you are going to have the flexibility. It's really what the outcomes are. So the lessons I've learned, most importantly, the ethics and the integrity, that you are true to your word and that you approach everybody up front. If you mess up, you just say, I've messed up, and you move forward. And I give employees a lot more credit for fixing something they've messed up. I think that's a great attribute. So, yes, it's upsetting that something has gone wrong. However, if someone can recover, that's even better. And if they can put something back on track and figure out how to make it work. Really, my closing message is really on this topic is really to define your own success and figure out what that success includes. And everyone's different. Some want to be hard charging and their success is either the position or the money or something like that. Others, it's all about the family, and some women maybe want to go part-time because they really feel like they really need to spend more time at home. So it's really where you find yourself, but try to define your success because that will steer you in a direction that will make you happy and be fulfilled. And I've seen many combinations in the women that I've managed or worked with, and it's not that one is better than the other, but to me, you have to figure out what you want and what that balance is if you are going to try to be successful and feel fulfilled. Because if you start down a path and you're trying to be everything to everybody and that's not where you are, then it really won't work. And you'll feel like you're not good at anything or either one. So I've really tried to really work on that and to find your passion, to really find what makes you content and the challenges, and to speak up and seek those challenges. And if you're not in the right job or the perfect job, then you need to figure out what it will take to move to something different that will challenge you. So with that, I'd like to tell you what really is exciting to me right now. I have been a lot of places in the company, and you heard my background. I am more on the engineering technical side, and I have had jobs that are like very far from that. I headed up HR, procurement, supply chain, that are very more softer skills, and it's been great. I've learned a lot from that. This has been really perfect to me, and really 3 years ago, Tom Farrell said, we really need to be looking at these alternative energy options out there, what's happening in the energy industry, looking at the transformation, and really need to figure out what's happening and where Dominion should be. So he said, I'd like you to head this up. You tell me how we're going to do it. And so I really started with a clean slate. And that's been a lot of fun. There have been about 3 organizations in Dominion that I have really started from scratch. And I think that's one of the things he sometimes turns to me, because it's something I've done before, and it takes figuring out and pulling in the right people in order to get something going. My organization, Alternative Energy Solutions, we are in, they say, the services company, so we really provide services to all of our business units. Dominion has 3 primary business units. Dominion Virginia Power, which is really our electric transmission and distribution business. That's where you get the bills from. That's what some of the operations in this area, our wires business, so to speak. Dominion Generation is all of our generation, whether it be in the Dominion service territory or outside of our service territory. It's all of our nuclear plants, coal plants, natural gas, and all of our, if we have larger scale renewables, wind, biomass, that's managed in Dominion Generation. Dominion Energy is our gas business. Gas transmission and distribution. We have distribution companies in Ohio and West Virginia. We sold our Pennsylvania operations. We have the largest gas storage business in the country, and it is right over the Appalachian Mountains. And if you've heard anything about this Marcellus shale, that is like we have 200 years worth of gas, it is the Marcellus shale gas, and our pipelines and Dominion's pipelines and storage are sitting right on top of it. So we have a lot of effort, a lot of large-scale projects to do more gas processing, we call it, processing plants, and to move that gas and build pipelines that will move that gas various parts of the country. To the East Coast, where population centers, but really to get the gas out of that region and move it so it can be used. It has turned the gas business upside down. We have a liquefied natural gas facility in Maryland, which is actually was designed to import gas from foreign countries in a liquefied state, and then to process it, turn it into natural gas, and to transport it. Well, now we have more. That was when we did not have enough gas. That was 4 or 5 years ago. Now we have so much gas available, they think, that we are looking to flip that facility, actually turn it into a plant that does liquefy the gas and then ship it out. So we are actually applying to the Department of Energy to try to flip that facility, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, but it's that just shows you how much our world and the gas storage business has changed. So my group looks at all emerging technologies and the impact on Dominion's business. Foster the development of those new and emerging technologies, develop the long-term strategic plan on how we will build those into what Dominion is doing from a business plan standpoint, participate in the shaping of state and federal regulatory and legislative policy. Some of those policies very much advantage energy, new energy technologies, but some disadvantage them. We have things like investment tax credits, production tax credits, and mandates that actually push new technologies. We have others, especially in the regulatory world, that actually inhibit the adoption of new technologies. So we try to shape it and try to work with our legislators. And then identify business opportunities. The bottom line is, how will this affect Dominion? what should our business position be, and how can we make some money out of it, basically, but bring those technologies to the forefront. So these are the ones, we track about 23 technologies, 23 to 25. My organization is somewhat unique, we found, in the industry, in that we look for everything from we call it the transmission and distribution side, smart grid, electric vehicles, solar distributed generation, which are the panels on the rooftops. And we also look everything over to large-scale generation, offshore wind, fuel cells, solar, and battery storage. Many companies in our industry will be looking at these, but they will be in pockets. You'll have the distribution business they'll have a smart grid director or something like that. And you'll see the generation folks, they have their nuclear and their fossil plants, and they may have solar or large-scale solar or wind, onshore wind. We have it all in my organization, which is a great advantage because I have folks really looking and researching these and what's the viability. And when we look at solar, we're looking at it from putting it on rooftops all the way up to putting large scale. The project that we proposed in Halifax, some of you might have been familiar with this, it was a 4 megawatt solar facility coupled with batteries. And we are so excited. We had the site identified. 4 megawatts of solar would have been about 40 to 50 acres. You would have noticed this thing. It would have been fantastic. We wanted to couple it with battery storage, and that was the unique aspect from an R&D perspective. We were requesting Tobacco Commission funds, if you're familiar with that, and we were working with a battery manufacturer that was basically startup, but we really liked their technology. What we were trying to accomplish is that the peak of the sun in Virginia is about an hour or two off from our system peak at Dominion. So what we wanted to do was to have the solar panels, store the power in the batteries so that when we hit our system peak, we could release it, and that would bring Dominion's load down. So this was very advanced, very unique, very excited about it. The battery company was really struggling to hit our targets and bring a prototype to the level that we would need in order to feel comfortable coupling it with the large-scale solar. So they just couldn't make it. And we tried to help them out, but they could not get the prototype ready. So we had to abandon that project. I'm hoping it comes back. And there are options or possibilities. The new plant we're looking at in Brunswick, we are looking at putting solar, and that's not, I guess, too far from here, but we're looking at putting large-scale solar there. I'm still very interested in solar. So these are the ones that are primaries, tops on our list, where we are actively working on things pretty hardcore right now. We are also monitoring about 15 or so other technologies. So I'm just going to touch on these. On the smart grid side, you'll see here we have the customer in the house and then the distribution grid from Dominion Virginia Power. And you'll see this little thing in the middle called the AMI meter. That's the Advanced Metering Infrastructure Meter. It's a smart meter. It actually can send signals two ways. The meters that everyone has basically right now, we are not able to really send signals and get and actually adjust loads, things like that, or the customer can't get information off the meters you typically have. Charlottesville is totally AMI right now, and outside of Midlothian, a couple of substations or circuits there, and then we're in Falls Church and we're installing in Williamsburg, and these are demonstrations. A lot of the focus of these AMI meters were pushed by the Obama administration. They came out with this stimulus money, the ARRA money, and about $4 billion was allocated to smart meter deployment in the U.S., thinking that would help transform our grid and make it more efficient, thinking that most of the activity would be on the customer side, that now these smart meters would allow customers to know what's happening at their particular home, and they can adjust, have programmable thermostats, and do other things to adjust their load. We were, at Dominion, we were really never believers in that. We did not think that customers, they may want to do some, but they probably wouldn't do a whole lot. And there is some efficiency to be gained, but what we are really seeing is it really isn't sticking that well. You can gain some, but things like shutting off air conditioners, people will sign up or say they're going to do it, and the first time you shut those air conditioners off for 4 hours, it's like, done. I'm out of this program. And so a lot of we found is minor adjustments, but to really go for anything significant, it probably won't happen. We have put a lot of our emphasis on the distribution or the Dominion side of that meter because the information in that meter we have never had before. We now have at every customer location, once we have this installed, we have information on voltage at every customer location. We have never had that. We have had information at, we call it the distribution substation, which is back up the line. So by having this voltage information, we now are able to control or look at the ability to control voltage on the grid. So what we have done, we have an engineer that works for me who had a Six Sigma project, if you've heard of Six Sigma, it's an efficiency, and he basically designed an algorithm that would take those voltage readings and it would actually close in the voltage that the band and voltage, which we have to keep quite wide to make sure the last house on the circuit has enough voltage for all of the uses that you have. So we kept it fairly wide. What we're finding is if we have that information, we can close it in because we know, and we will have the information constantly on the voltage at every customer location. So we can close it in. It results in a savings of 3 to 5%. Which our customers will just see their consumption drop and their bill will go down. So what we did is we saw this algorithm he had created, and my organization, we said, wait a minute, this could really do something. I think we need to patent this thing. So we immediately applied for a patent. And we have now commercialized it, and we are selling this product in my group, which is kind of fun because we have a startup business within this big old utility, and it is very much startup, and we've sold our first product to a utility in Oregon. We have a lot of companies that are interested in this because you can basically hand a company a 3 to 5% reduction in energy consumption, which is huge, huge. The payback on this is we found at our substation in Midlothian that in 6 months, the customers on this one circuit saved between, I guess it was like $400,000 off of their bill. So it is real. And so this is basically, it's precision customer voltage control, substantial customer savings, energy savings, and now we have developed the product so that we can actually reduce, we call it the peak demand. Instead of just overall energy reduction, we can actually turn on this algorithm, and when it's really costly for Dominion at the peak time, we can actually bring this down, and the customers know nothing. You're within the bandwidth you need to be, you don't even realize it, and we're just controlling it behind the scenes and gaining these efficiencies in the customer. So that's been very exciting. We just hired our person to head up this business. He's out of Minnesota, very big in the industry, a smart grid industry, and we have 3 salespeople now that have been hired, and Dominion never has salespeople. So this is like turning our company like upside down. It's really been fun. I fully appreciate startup businesses like you can't imagine now because it is a grind. It is tough to try to go after your accounts. But anyway, that's been kind of a fun thing that we have developed in my organization. On solar distributed generation, this just shows you the growth. It has been just amazing. And the prices for solar panels have come down like you would not believe, cut in half in the past 2 years, and we think they're going to be cut in half again. So we are very interested in this. Customers and large scale. There is still an investment tax credit for 30% that will go until 2016. And so a couple of things. We have filed, I think I have it here, yes, we have filed for company-owned distributed generation. I talk about the policy side of things. We had legislation passed in last year's General Assembly that we pushed for to allow Dominion to own solar panels on customers' rooftops. And we actually lease the rooftops from our customers. Instead of a customer having all the upfront cost of having to do an installation and pay for it, we'll put it on, we'll take the power, the generation, onto our grid, and we'll pay you for your rooftop, which is about the same as crediting your bill if you were to have the solar generation and use it yourself. So that's exciting. We are awaiting the commission order. We've already had the hearings. It's about 30 megawatts, which is pretty sizable. So we're hoping that that gets going, and that will give our customers another option. And then we have a special tariff for customers who are going to install themselves, a special tariff that will encourage them to send that power to the grid. If they have put on more than they need, then we want it. So again, it's really trying to optimize the use of these new technologies. Then there's electric vehicles. We're interested in this because there are 35 new models coming out by 2013. 2 of my employees have Chevy Volts. And so we are going to be installing or testing the charging for employees at the Dominion facility downtown because we are getting some employees that are very interested in this. So these are the ones that are coming out, and Richmond was identified as a launch city for the Ford Focus. And our Northern Virginia, outside of D.C., is a launch area for the Chevy Volt and for the Nissan Leaf. So we knew this would very much affect our service territory, so we knew we had to get right on top of it. I head up an organization, you might have heard, the Sustainable Transportation Initiative of Richmond, and that is a group of business leaders that were just very interested in making sure Richmond was prepared and trying to push for Ford to announce Richmond as a launch city, and we were successful. We now have received a Department of Energy grant that we are looking at the planning, the infrastructure that's required for electric vehicles, which you think it sounds so easy, but in Richmond at least, what are you going to do if you're familiar with it, like our fan area where there are townhouses? So, where do you charge these things? You can't have an extension cord going out your door and down to the sidewalk. So we are working on planning the infrastructure and how these will actually work. So that's been fun. Everyone says, so what are these electric vehicles really going to make it? They are economical now. If you look at the left-hand side, this is just the fuel cost. And to read this chart, you can see that we have it, I think, on $3, $4, and $5 a gallon. We added the $5, I guess, last year when we saw that gas prices were going up, but fortunately they've come down. If you look at the bar on the under fuel cost to the far right, that is basically a typical vehicle. I think doesn't get very good miles per gallon, but you can see we've equated this all to cost per mile. So that's in the neighborhood of about 17 cents per mile. If you look at the purple on the far left, that's the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt. It's basically a penny per mile to charge these. So we know on fuel it's a home run, that it's really very little to charge these vehicles, and that's enough to take you 40 miles. And you do a penny per mile. So if you look at total cost, however, you say, well, these things cost a lot. Well, there is a $7,500 federal tax credit for electric vehicles. So you have one is, I think, $32,000, and so with the $7,500, you bring it down to about $25,000. So when the blue part of the bar is the cost of the vehicle. And then if you add the fuel on top of it, so this would be looking at the total cost, you'll see that in particular the Nissan Leaf is actually cheaper than all of the other standard vehicles at different miles per gallon. So right now you have to make sure it fits your lifestyle. The Chevy Volt is 40 miles on an electric charge, and the Chevy Volt has a backup gas tank, so it flips over. So you can go about 400 miles in this car on a gallon of gas, I mean on a full tank of gas, because it's got the electric and then it flips over. So I have 2 employees that have Chevy Volts. They said they've barely put any gas in it, but you have to figure out if it works with your driving time and how far you're going. The Nissan Leaf is 100 miles on an electric charge. So again, with this project on infrastructure, we're trying to figure out how we get public charging, how it links up to public transportation. So how can we get these things so that they are available? So you say, what does Dominion? Well, first of all, it is sales of electricity for Dominion. But one of the things we have to think about is, when do those sales occur? So we knew we had to get on top of this, because this chart will show you the different types of vehicles, and the middle part that's circled is actually, we call it the demand charge. It's when you plug the car in, what will the car be basically drawing off of our system. And you can see the 3.3 kW. Well, now the Chevy Volt and Nissan, the new versions are coming out, and basically almost all of them are going to be 6.6 kW. That means that's what it will draw. That is almost a full house load. It's an average full house load. So we're thinking, okay, so we've built a circuit, picture your subdivision, and we've sized that transformer, so to speak, because of the houses there. And we do think that when electric vehicles start coming, it'll be in clusters. And you figure, okay, someone gets it and then their neighbor sees it and they'll get it. So if you think, all right, this circuit or this transformer is sized to support the homes on it, and all of a sudden you could have everybody get an electric vehicle, and now we've got double the load on that circuit. So we thought, oh, well, I think we better do something or figure this out. So we are looking at when those vehicles are charged and what are our options. So we actually immediately last year, actually I'll go back, I don't have a slide on it, we actually filed for electric vehicle tariffs, and we had them approved. So now we have electric vehicle tariffs that encourage charging after 7 p.m. and even goes down further at 1 a.m. in the morning. And a vehicle on our current rates today would cost you about $1.10. We have fairly low rates, so $1.10 to fill, basically put your full charge. On our electric vehicle rates, you can charge it for 50 cents. So it's really encouraging to move to that off-peak. The people that we have on those rates now, they're doing it. They come home, there's a timer set. Even if they come in at 4 o'clock, it doesn't start charging. It'll start at 7 or at 1 a.m. And there's enough time so that you can be charged for the next morning. Again, has to fit your lifestyle. Level 1 charging is an outlet in the wall. You can plug any electric vehicle into an outlet in the wall and charge it. It'll take about 6 to 7, maybe 8 hours. Level 2 charging is 240 volt. It'll take you about 3 to 4 hours. We think everything will probably move towards level 2. Level 3 is the fast charge. You can charge in 15 minutes, and those are being installed public, but it is here. You can charge a vehicle in 15 minutes. So picture your sheets down here, and they'll have another area that's for electric vehicles, and they'd love it if you spent 15 minutes in sheets getting your food and sitting down and eating. So anyway, it's something we're watching very closely. Offshore wind. When I took my new position, it wasn't even on our list. And then all of a sudden, so much started happening. And Virginia is a target area for offshore wind. There are 4 wind energy areas that have been declared basically by the Department of Interior as being the best locations for offshore wind, and Virginia is one of them. They've gone ahead with the environmental assessments. And now we actually received one of these Department of Energy grants in my organization that is looking at cost reductions, and we are teamed up with a large turbine manufacturer to really look at how we can bring down the costs of offshore wind. This is the map off the Virginia coast, and I like to use this map because the yellow box over to the right is the wind energy area. It's about 110,000 acres. It is 24 miles off the Virginia coast. That is Virginia Beach, the other little yellow area. And the reason it is out that far is that the Department of Defense, you can imagine, off of all the military installations off of Virginia. So when we're looking at where the wind energy area should be, Department of Defense, they have surface-to-air missile launching testing. They've got all these buried mines. They've got all this stuff that we probably don't even know half of. And they basically said off limits. So our wind energy area is 24 miles off. There has been, we call it a call for information, which is the first step that the Department of Interior puts out to see who's interested in leasing these parcels off the Virginia coast. And 8 respondents, and Dominion was one. We're the only utility in the country that is really pushing or participating as a developer in offshore wind. In the northeast locations, wind energy areas, there are private developers, and they are turning around to the utilities and saying, you have to buy our power, and they're being legislated to buy it. It's not working very well. They're running into lawsuits. Dominion basically said, we're not going to buy the power if we're going to build it. If we're going to be involved, we're going to build it and we're going to own it. So we have been very proactive. We have submitted a nomination for the entire wind energy area, and then we think that sale notice is going to come out probably after the elections. It was supposed to come out before, but we think that the Obama administration is worried about really stepping out on the renewables right now. So we think it'll come after the elections, and it will be an auction process. And I just know Dominion is very interested, and we hope that we will be the ones to develop the wind energy area. It is very costly. It will not be developed unless we are assured that we can bring the cost down so that it is advantageous to our ratepayers, and we have said that. And that is something that we are working very much on. We've done transmission studies to identify the costs of bringing the power in to Dominion territory. We are it's very great that we have a great transmission system, better than any of the utilities up north, where we can bring in the offshore wind and not have to upgrade our system. So we're in a very good place on that. Also in my organization, looking at what's happening in the marketplace, we have invested in companies, startup companies. Really, one of the focus areas that I have is to find the technologies, see who's involved in those technologies, and try to enable them being successful. And some of that involves us actually investing. Power tagging is a startup business out of Boulder, Colorado. We think it's an incredible technology. It's basically bringing data over the power lines. It has been tried before, and it hasn't worked in other technologies because the signal can't make it basically through our substation equipment. This company has a way it does. It's basically in the frequency and how they bring the data in, and we've tested it in our system, and the data comes screaming through. And we are sold on it. Our partner in this is Lockheed Martin, so we are in good company. They also have invested. So it is out of the garage, and it has been a struggle, but we are convinced this technology is something great. So that's been a fun one as well. SmartSync is really sending signals over the wireless from these smart meters. And that one actually, that company was sold to Itron, which is a big meter company, and we cashed out. So we did great on that investment. But that's one company that has done very well. Extreme Power is battery storage. We are very high on their technology, and we think batteries are really coming along. We are looking at a 20 megawatt size battery, and that's big for batteries. And the nice thing is, if that plays out, batteries are stackable. So you can, if we prove it out that a 20 megawatt can work, we will be able to stack them. And that will mean you can store electricity, and that is huge. Heliosage is out of Charlottesville. They are a solar development company, do large installations, and they're mostly in the Northeast where there's a big push on larger scale solar, and they have done very well. And then Power Assure is a company that is focused on really controlling or optimizing the load in data centers. And they have some algorithms and some software that helps to manage the load in these incredibly large data centers that we have a lot of them in the Dominion service territory. So that's just kind of another fun aside. Not many companies, utilities, go out and actually invest. It's like a venture capital fund, and we actually look for businesses and look to invest in them. So that just gives you a glimpse. So basically, there are considerable technology advancements. It is really coming along, but there's no silver bullet. Even if the technology is good, it takes a group to pull it off of folks that are stakeholders or are interested in it. It's an evolution, not a revolution. Everyone thinks the cell phone has been here forever and it happened overnight, but if you really look at it, it took a long time. And that's what we're seeing with some of these technologies. The solar distributed generation is the same way. People could have their own distribution at their houses or their businesses down the road. And it's starting to happen, and that's what happened with cell phones. A lot of people don't even have landlines for their phone service into their house anymore. So costs must come down, and the scalability is really critical. We have to get these to a scale where we can bring the costs down. That's it. Any questions? Do we have time for anybody? Time for questions? Or yeah. Okay. All right. Any questions?
I had a question on your offshore.
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of heard that some of the cost prohibitiveness of it is the coatings and the durability.
Well, it's never, first of all, there are offshore wind turbines in Europe, and they've got a lot of them. However, they've never been tested in the Atlantic. We don't have any. And the adverse weather conditions are something that the turbine manufacturers are concerned about, which some of it is the coating, some of it is the blade design, what happens with a hurricane. Do you have the blades come down? What do you do? Do you just position them? So I don't know that the coatings themselves is the big cost, but it's part of this whole picture of what's required in the Atlantic versus Europe. Mm-hmm. What else?
How did you get started in your career path? In other words, the path that you took is traditionally not what women do.
Right.
How did you get started on that?
Well, just the educational. I always wanted, engineering and business. And I was physics and economics undergrad and just liked that combination. I didn't want to go straight research and physics and science. And so when I was going to graduate school, I looked for a program that had both engineering and business. And MIT had allowed me to take half my classes at the engineering school and half at the business school, and I liked that combination. So when I came to Dominion, which is really arrived in Richmond because my husband is from that area, but fortunately he was from an area that had some larger companies, I really came in on the business side in economics and did forecasting of our load for Dominion. And really, but was open to go different areas in the company. But the fact that I had the technical background, wherever I went, because we're a technical company, it helped for me to understand what was going on. But I always knew that I wanted to be on the business side, but to be in a more technical area. And that's just what I was more interested in. And so fortunately, I've had different times when I'm really not applying or not using that, but that has helped kind of round me out. But I've always known that that's the area I was interested in, and so it's.
From high school? Was it in high school? Was it?
Well, my grandmother actually has a picture I drew when I was younger of this like machine, and she pulled it out one time, and I said, "That is really weird." So I guess I had always been more on that side of it, and just like the technical side. But I will say this, and I actually had a note that in my graduate school, I was probably I was in most of my classes the only woman. And I thought that would change dramatically as I went into, and I thought, okay, this is just a start in a lot of women. But even today, only 20% of the engineering degrees are for women. And I've spoken at the Science Museum for the STEM part of things and how we can really push the science, technology, engineering, math for young women. I know my daughters go to St. Catherine's in Richmond, and they introduced a STEM program and robotics to try to really focus on that. But really, it's such great opportunity for women because companies are looking for women engineers, and there just aren't many. And it's something that I think, from an education standpoint, we really do need to focus on. There's no reason. There are great women that are technical and can do that. It's just, are they pushed or afforded the opportunity to learn it and to feel comfortable that they can learn it? But I am shocked even today that there are so few women that are in engineering. At Dominion, we have them, but it's not a lot.
Why do you think that is so?
I think traditionally that young girls are just not, push is too hard a word, but they're not given the support to really be focused in that and show they can be successful. And I think we have to show them and provide that kind of scenario or that condition where they are successful and they know they can achieve that. And it's not like they need special tutoring or anything. They just need to be exposed and that's an opportunity, and to see others that have done it. So I just, it's hard to put your finger on, but it's not like, women don't have the brain cells to do it. I mean, it's just, are they open, is that opened up as an option and shown how to make that work? And yes, you can go and be successful, and you can go to school and be successful in that as well. So it's just something that I feel really strongly about. And they kid me because, well, out of my 5 children, and my husband's a doctor, so the first 2 are more medical. They're getting, one's their PhD and one's in dental school, and then number 3 is not going to be an engineer. And so she's into sports and event planning and all, which will be fun, but it's not my thing. And so they're all kidding me, and because one of my twins is very much into physics and STEM and all this stuff, and I got her class to take a tour of one of our power plants and all this, so they all give her a hard time and say that I finally got an engineer out of the group. So out of 5, I got 1. Yes.
Right when women or girls are in that decision-making position, they're starting to know about boys, and they don't want to compete with boys because they want to date boys. And so, they're right at that point where they make a decision. They're going to say, "Oh, I want to date Johnny. I don't want to compete with Johnny." So that is a time period in their lives where some women or a man can do it too, but they've got to say it's okay to be smarter than Johnny.
Right, and to go into this area, right.
Go into this area, and they've shown a lot of studies where it probably is smart to take separate boys and girls at that level and take them away and put the girls in a math class or a science class. Yeah,
and it's that middle school, and it's funny because mine, of course, go to a all-girls school, and theirs is more combined in the upper school with their brother school. And there's another private school in Richmond that has never done that, and 3 years ago, they took the middle school and separated the boys and girls. They're together in elementary, they're together in high school, but they separated them in the middle school. And I think it was just targeting that. I see it, and it's just the confidence and telling them that they can try things and get confident in it without having that distraction or that critique or, as you said, the boys, the competition. I couldn't agree more. And you see, it's not just in this, too. It's also in athletics, that they don't have to prove themselves. So, separate them, and then they can go try a sport that maybe someone might laugh at them, but then all of a sudden they try it. And I don't know if any of you have even tried like pole vaulting. All right, so I had a pole vaulting daughter, and so I tell everybody that's the kind of thing where you want to go in the field house or somewhere and not have anyone around if you're going to try it, because if you've seen someone trying to learn how to pole vault, it is like really frustrating and kind of funny, because they're like, you plant the pole and then they'll just go boom, and then it's like you got to get up, and it's the same kind of thing. I don't think a girl would even try to pole vault if there were a bunch of guys around, and there's no way. It's kind of the same thing, that you just have to give them some confidence. And I talk to a lot of women at Dominion that are just thinking of what they want to do, and it is, they just haven't been programmed to.
Whatever we can do to help
Right.
out.
I think structured STEM types of programs, and I know a lot of communities are really pushing that, but structured programs that really address it and expose the girls and get them into seeing robotics, those types of things are really important.
I think also, maybe more so in this area than, say, Richmond area, there aren't many parents or family members that know what engineering really is.
Right.
So, I came along, in the years when women were just getting opportunities, and I was told, major in accounting or go into law, that's
Right,
my parents were pushing me to do something other than back when I was growing, everybody was a teacher or
Right.
nurse or something like that. So, and the accounting field was new to women, and
Right.
you go to Virginia
Uh-huh.
Tech and they say, we don't have women in accounting. Okay, well, I won't go here then.
Right.
And I end up
Right.
wherever. But now women are all through accounting. There's
Right.
probably more women accounting majors
Mm-hmm.
than men at this
Right.
point.
Right.
So engineering has to figure out a way to make it knowledgeable to not just the girls, but
Right.
their parents or whoever is their mentor or encourager.
Right. And math is a big basis
Right.
to kind of get them started that way and on the track, and then the other kind of comes together. And then the physics. Not many schools. There were years ago, not many schools even offered physics, so now they offer physics, so I think that's great. What else? Taking a lot of your time. Yes?
I know myself. I know I limit myself because of travel. Because I was brought up in the country, I lived in the country, so I still work in the country. There's a lot of interests that I have downtown, but even at I'm almost 50, I still have a fear of whether I could cope with traffic every single day. And it's sad that you can't overcome something as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're limiting yourself. And
But-
how did you do that? You just kind of
But-
you looked at your game plan and you looked at what opportunities that would maybe bring you, and then you just put
Right. Well, I have
yourself
a,
in box.
yeah, and you kind of have to deal with it in certain times a different way. When I was traveling a lot in my job, I had all of the metering business in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and all of the Virginia area and North Carolina. So I did have to travel, and it was when we had taken over the gas business, so I had to be present. I had to be there because we were merging in another company. And so my twins were maybe, 4, 5, 6 years old, and it was really hard. I had to there were some weeks, fortunately flights were great to Pittsburgh and to Cleveland. I could leave the house, catch a flight at 8 o'clock, and I could be up there in Cleveland or Pittsburgh at 8 o'clock. I'd catch it at 6, be up there at 8, I'd catch a flight back at 4, and I'd be home by, say, 5:30. And I sometimes would do that 3 times a week. And because I had to do it, because I had to be home that evening and dinner. So that was tough on me, but it was better for the family and the kids. And so that was a phase that was very difficult. It got to be a joke because my husband would call the office and they'd say, oh, she's in Pittsburgh. And he'd say, like, oh, I didn't know that. It's because I'd be home that night, but I was gone for the day. I had to do it for that period of time and stick it out. But I could not have kept doing that. So you have to figure out, if it's just not you and you can't sustain it, then either you figure out a way it will work, or you limit it to a certain amount of time, or to me it's a situation you probably won't be happy in doing. So again, there are times when it hasn't been the best, but you feel like this is a transition or a period of time when I do have to do it. I realized that was part of my job, but I tried to work it for the time, but it was really hard. And I have a guy who just started work for me when I started this organization. He was heading up our power stations in New England. He was told it was a 2-year. Got an apartment up there. His kids were in high school. He was in his 5th year. And he basically was screaming and saying to Dominion, I've got to come back. Fortunately, my group was formed. He's perfect for what I needed, and he came into the group. But he was about just so much you can handle. You can do it for a period of time, and I've had many different situations where for that period of time it had to work. And my family was supportive and understood. So it's, I think, but in the long term, you've got to really, I think about whether you'll be happy.
You had to face the relocation piece of that, or did you just deal with it?
I dealt with it with travel. Relocation wasn't an option, but I had the job, and the job was out of Richmond, but it was I felt like I had to be in the other locations because we were incorporating it, and I had to spend a lot of time. So, and there were times, some weeks I did have to stay up there. I mean, I couldn't get around it, but if I could make it work, I'd go back and forth.
I had a question on the technology piece. A lot of those different pieces here that, where I know we're going into other parts of the country and then parts of it in Virginia. What do you think is the most exciting option out there for Virginia as far as some of the newer technology?
I think the smart grid that we are going to propose deployment of the smart grid, I think is something they have to do. We have to upgrade the distribution system. It's just, there's too much going on at the customer end that we need to figure out how to manage. And if we don't, we're going to have some situations on our grid because all of a sudden you've got solar panels and you could have batteries and you could have fuel cells. We're looking at a fuel cell installation in Connecticut that we are actually going to participate in. So I think that's huge. I think the offshore wind is an incredible opportunity if it's going to be done in this country, and for us to try to lead it to get it to a place where it could be sustainable.